She's not even yours. That's what Charles told me, with a glass of wine in one hand and a smirk on his lips like he hadn't just detonated a bomb inside my chest. I had just finished assembling Leah's new bookshelf, my daughter's. Favorite storybooks neatly arranged by color the way she liked them. My shirt was still damp with sweat from the effort, and my fingers had tiny blisters from the screwdriver. I was sitting cross-legged on the carpet, flipping through her old drawings when he said it. Just like that. No warning. No lead-up. I looked up slowly. What? He took a long sip of his drink and repeated it slower this time. She's not even yours, Isaac. You've been playing dad for 5 years to a kid that doesn't even share. Your blood. The silence that followed was so thick I could hear my own heartbeat. I thought I misheard him. Or maybe this was another one of his cruel jokes. But Charles wasn't laughing. His eyes held no amusement, just cold satisfaction. As if he had been waiting for this moment. As if he knew this would be the thing that finally broke me. My hands tightened around the paper in my lap. Leah's drawing from last month. Stick figures, her, me, and Leah holding hands under a sun with a smiling face. In crayon, she'd written, "My real daddy," under my figure. My throat burned, but I kept my voice steady. What are you talking about? Charles shrugged. Ask Leah's mother. Ask Leah even. I bet even she knows something's off. You think she looks like you? Come on, man, open your eyes. I stood up slowly. Not because I wanted to hit him, but because if I didn't move, I would have collapsed right there. My legs were trembling. My mind was already racing back 5 years, to the night Leah was born, to the trembling in Leah's mother's hands when she first let me hold her, to the quiet things I had ignored, the timelines that never quite matched. I'd thought I was building a family. I thought love made blood irrelevant. But now it felt like I'd been living in a story someone else had written. And they'd just ripped out the last 5 years. My name is Isaac, and for 5 years I believed I was a father, not in the biological sense, maybe, but in every way that mattered. I was there when Leah took her first step, her first fall, her first fever. I was the one she called for when she had nightmares. The one who walked her into preschool and held her hand until she was brave enough to go in on her own. The one who knew how she liked the corners of her toast cut off and which stuffed animal she needed to fall asleep. Every scraped knee, every birthday candle, every tiny shoe I learned to lace. I was there. Her mother, Leah, and we were supposed to be a family, and now, with one sentence, Charles had reduced it all to a performance. A lie. But if I'm being honest, the doubt didn't start with him. It started the day Leah was born. I remember standing in the hospital hallway with a bouquet of white lilies trying to breathe. Leah, the woman, not the child, had gone into labor 3 weeks early. She'd called me while I was still on a delivery route, frantic, voice shaking. I ran 3 red lights getting there. I wasn't allowed in the room. She told me it was an emergency delivery, complications, stress, something about the doctors being strict. I waited 5 hours outside. That door, the lilies wilting in my grip. And when the nurse finally wheeled her out, she looked tired and distant. She barely let me hold the baby, barely looked me in the eye. But I brushed it off. I told myself it was the exhaustion, the trauma. I convinced myself we'd be fine once we were home. I believed, because I wanted to. Leah and I had known each other since college. She was the kind of girl everyone noticed. Sharp cheekbones, sharper tongue. I was the guy people called reliable, the one who always had jumper cables in his trunk. Not the kind you fall head over heels for, but the kind you marry because he won't walk away. We weren't explosive. We were steady. And maybe that's what I thought love was supposed to be, reliable, built on little things. I moved into her apartment after she told me she was pregnant. We didn't talk about marriage. She said she didn't believe in it, said we were already a family and didn't need papers to prove it. I didn't push. I thought, as long as I'm here for her, for Leah, that's enough. But now that I think back, I was always trying to earn my place in their lives. I cooked breakfast. I picked up the groceries. I worked double shifts delivering packages, wore myself out just to keep the lights on and the fridge stocked. I made up bedtime stories and brought her medicine when she had the sniffles. I planned birthdays and watched over Leah when her mother had night shifts. I put them first every time, and Leah, little Leah, she made it worth it. She had this smile that could melt steel, big brown eyes, curious about everything. She called me Daddy from the time she could speak. She didn't know anything else. I was her world, and she was mine. But now I look back at those memories with a haze over them. Was I just a stand-in? A placeholder until the truth slipped out? I don't even know when Charles came back into the picture. Leah said he was just an old friend. She mentioned him, once or twice. Someone from her early 20s. I thought nothing of it. She never gave me a reason not to trust her. But Charles? He never liked me. Whenever we crossed paths, I could feel his contempt. The way he looked at me like I was wearing someone else's shoes. I didn't understand it then. Now I do. He knew. He knew all along. The strange thing is, even with that knowledge tearing holes in my chest, I couldn't stop thinking about Leah, the little girl sleeping down the hallway, not the woman who broke me. What do I say to her? How do you tell a 5-year-old that the man she calls Dad might not be her father? That everything she's known since birth might have been built on a secret? But then again, was it really a lie if I loved her more than anything? When I walked into her room that night, she was still awake. Her tiny lamp was on, casting a soft glow on her shelves filled with picture books and plush toys. She looked up and smiled, her cheeks flushed with warmth. Daddy, will you read me the Rocket book again? I couldn't speak right away. My throat tightened, but I forced a smile and nodded. Of course, baby. She scooted over on the bed, patting the spot beside her. I laid down and opened the book. I didn't remember a word I read. My eyes were following the lines, but my mind was elsewhere, on birth certificates, on hospital rooms, on the way Leah avoided eye contact that day 5 years ago. When she finally drifted off, one hand curled around my shirt. I stayed there, watched her breathe, felt her heartbeat through her little fingers, and I knew one thing for sure. No matter what Charles said, no matter what Leah had done, I had raised this child. I had loved her without limits, and in my heart, that made her mine. Blood might have started the story, but love was the one that raised her. The morning after Charles dropped the truth like a blade to the chest, I waited for Leah, the woman, to come home. She hadn't been around much lately. More night shifts, more vague explanations, more of those sudden text replies that read like deflections. Leah had a way of turning every question into an accusation. If I asked her where she was, she'd ask why I didn't trust her. If I asked about Charles, she'd scoff and call me insecure. So, for the past year, I'd stopped asking. But not today. Today, I needed to know. She walked in around 10. Her hair was windblown, her lips bare. She looked tired, but not the kind of tired that came from working a long shift. Her face was too composed, her posture too guarded. She was preparing for something. Maybe she knew. Maybe Charles had already told her he'd opened his mouth. Hey, she said, kicking off her heels by the door like it was just another Tuesday. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the sink, my knuckles pale. I didn't speak. She glanced at me once, then again. What's wrong? I tilted my head slightly. Is she mine? Leah froze. Her purse slipped off her shoulder and hit the floor with a soft thud. Her eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Don't do that. My voice came out low, almost shaking. Don't act like you don't know. She blinked, took a breath. Who told you? There it was. I didn't need a DNA test. I didn't need proof. That one question was enough. Charles, I said. He looked me in the eye and told me, I've been raising his daughter for 5 years. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She reached for a chair and sat, like the truth had weight. She's not his. she said after a moment. She's not yours either. I felt everything in my chest collapse inward. I'd prepared for betrayal, but not this. Not this floating ambiguity. Then who? I asked, my voice sharp now, a demand rather than a plea. She rubbed her temples like I was giving her a headache. It was one night, Isaac, before you and I even got serious. I didn't know I was pregnant until weeks later, and by then you were already in love with the idea of being a father. So you let me believe she was mine? You were the father, she snapped. You were the one who stayed. You're the one who took care of her. I slammed my hand against the counter. That's not the same, Leah. You don't get to play God with someone's life. I didn't think you'd care about biology, she said, standing now, her voice rising. You said love was what made a family. Or was that just something nice to say at baby showers? Don't twist this. You chose to lie to me. Every diaper, every doctor's visit, every time I called her my daughter, you stood there and said nothing. Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't sure if they were guilt or anger. I didn't think I'd have to tell you. I thought maybe you'd never ask. That maybe it didn't matter. It matters, I said, quieter now, but firmer. It matters because it's my life, my love, and you used it like it belonged to you. She covered her face with her hands and sat, back down. I didn't mean to hurt you. I stayed silent. What was there left to say? She finally looked up. Isaac, if I told you back then, would you have stayed? The question hovered in the air between us. I didn't answer, because truthfully, I didn't know. Maybe I would have. Maybe I would have loved Leah anyway. Maybe I would have stepped in as her father, willingly, eyes open, but she never gave me that choice. That's what hurt the most. Not the betrayal. Not even the child who might never be mine. It was that Leah never trusted me enough to tell me the truth. That night I slept on the couch, not because she asked me to, but because I couldn't lie beside her and pretend we were okay. I woke up just before dawn and padded quietly to Leah's room. I opened the door gently, not hers, but the little one's. Leah, the child, was still. Asleep, her arms curled around her stuffed rabbit. I knelt beside her bed and brushed her hair back from her forehead. She stirred a little, then sighed and mumbled, "Daddy?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yeah, baby, I'm here." And I stayed there until the sun came up, because no matter what Leah, the woman, had done, this little girl still needed someone to stay. And for now, that was still me. Isaac sat alone in the dark living room, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the apartment. He hadn't turned on the lights. The shadows were easier than facing the sterile clarity of a well-lit room. His elbows rested on his knees, hands clasped tightly, trembling just enough to betray the storm within. He had spent the last 5 years believing in something that wasn't real. His identity had been rewritten in a single night, not by Leah's hands, not by Charles's words, but by the weight of a truth that had always been there, unspoken, rotting quietly beneath the surface of their home. Isaac had always been a quiet man. He never needed to scream to be heard. He believed that love was something you proved through consistency, not declarations. But now he felt voiceless, hollow. Every moment he had cherished with Leah, the child, now felt like a question mark. Had he really been her father in her eyes, or was he just the man who showed up when the real one didn't? He couldn't get her smile out of his mind, that little gap in her teeth when she laughed too hard, the way she squeezed his pinky with her whole hand when they crossed the street, the way she said, "I love you, Daddy," without hesitation. And yet, he wondered, was it all just mimicry? Was he just filling a space someone else had left behind? His thoughts spiraled. What would people say? Would they call him stupid, weak, a fool who raised another man's child without ever asking questions? Would they say he should walk away now that the truth was out? Would they understand if he didn't? He didn't know what was worse, the betrayal or the fact that part of him still wanted to protect Leah, still wanted to wake her up with pancakes and pack her lunch for school. still wanted to kiss her forehead goodnight and hear her call him, "Daddy!" But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Leah, the woman, standing in the kitchen, calmly saying, "She's not yours either." Like it was just a fact. Like it didn't shatter something inside him that would never fit back. The same way again, he had questions. So many questions. Why now? Why not tell him the truth before they built a life together? Was it guilt that stopped her? Or selfishness? And what about Charles? Had he known all along and just waited until now to gloat? Had Leah leaned on him for comfort during the pregnancy? Had Charles thought of Leah, the child, as his? Did he want her now? The uncertainty gnawed at Isaac. He wasn't angry, not in the traditional sense. It was worse than that. He was grieving the life he thought he had. Grieving the little rituals he believed were his alone, like the way Leah used to tug on his ear when she was sleepy, or the way she cried when he left for night shifts. Now he wondered, were those things hers, or had Leah taught them to her? His identity was built on those moments, and now they didn't belong to him. He walked into the hallway and stood outside Leah's door. The child was asleep, a soft snore escaping her mouth. Her arms clutched her bunny plush like it was her whole world. She looked peaceful, innocent, untouched by the wreckage the adults had created. How could he leave her now? How could he look her in the eye and say, "I'm not your dad anymore"? He couldn't, not yet, maybe not ever. But staying meant bleeding a little every day. It meant seeing Leah, the woman, at breakfast and pretending he hadn't watched his entire life collapse under her silence. It meant holding the hand of a child he loved more than anything in the world, knowing she wasn't truly his, and maybe never would be. His body felt heavier than it ever had before. Like every breath was a labor. He hadn't eaten all day. He hadn't slept more than 2 hours, but he couldn't stop replaying it. "She's not even yours." That sentence had lodged itself in his bones. It would never leave. And no matter how many bedtime stories he read or how many school lunches he packed, it would always echo in the quiet. Always. He stepped into his own bedroom, which suddenly felt foreign. He looked at the dresser, the framed photo of the three, of them smiling in a park. He turned it face down. That photo lied, just like she did. But then, as he sat on the edge of the bed, his phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "Audrey, I don't know if it's my place, but I thought you deserved to hear this from someone who saw it happen." His brows furrowed. Audrey? He remembered the name faintly. One of Leah's co-workers. They'd met once. Pleasant. Quiet. Another message followed. "Audrey, Charles isn't the father. He just wanted to hurt you. Leah told me herself once. She doesn't even know who the father is. She was scared and ashamed. That's why she never said anything." Isaac stared at the screen, his chest rising in shallow breaths. The storm inside him didn't calm, but it shifted. The betrayal still hurt. The silence still stung. But now, he understood something else. Even Leah, the woman, was drowning. He locked his phone and sat in the silence. He didn't have the answers yet. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just a love story anymore. This was survival. 3 days passed. Isaac kept his head down. He went through the motions, breakfast, laundry, grocery runs, picking Leah up from school, but none of it felt like life, just survival. Every smile from Leah the child twisted deeper into his chest. Every silence with Leah the woman widened, the rift between them. He hadn't told her about Audrey's message. Part of him wanted to confront her, demand the full truth now that he had leverage. But another part, the one too exhausted to argue anymore, just didn't want another half-hearted apology or deflection. He'd decided. After Leah's birthday, he would leave. He would write her a letter, not for the child, but the woman. She could explain it to their daughter, if she even had the decency to. But before that plan could take shape, a knock came at the door one afternoon. He opened it. Standing there was Audrey. She looked nervous, eyes darting past his shoulder like she wasn't sure if Leah was home. "She's at work," Isaac said quietly. Audrey nodded. "Can we talk?" They sat at the kitchen table. She was fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. "I know this is awkward," she said, "but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't serious." Isaac waited. "I lied," Audrey finally whispered. "Not everything, but Charles is the father." His breath caught. "What?" Audrey's voice shook. "I didn't mean to protect her. I meant to protect you. I saw how you looked at Leah, the little one, and when Leah told me how broken you were, I couldn't stand it. So I thought, maybe if you believed she didn't know who the father was, it'd hurt less." Isaac's vision blurred. Not from tears, his eyes were dry, but his chest felt like it had caved in. "So you gave me a gentler lie," he said flatly. Audrey looked down. "I thought it would soften the blow." It didn't. He stood up slowly. His chair scraped against the floor, the sound jarring. In the quiet, Audrey didn't move. "I'm sorry. I thought I was helping." But Isaac wasn't listening anymore. The pieces were all falling into place now. The distance, the late nights, the way Charles always acted like he knew something Isaac didn't. The smirk, the boldness. Of course. Why wouldn't he say it? To his face, because it was his child. And Leah, the woman, had let Isaac raise her. While Charles stood back, smug. The humiliation ran deeper than betrayal now. It was mockery. He walked out of the kitchen and into Leah's room. He opened her drawers, her closet, anything that might hide a clue. And then he found it. An old photo tucked into a jewelry box. Charles and Leah, smiling, together. The date on. The back was 3 months before Leah told Isaac she was pregnant. The timeline didn't just make sense, it was undeniable. He stood there for a long time, photo in hand, until his hand started to shake. This time, it wasn't from heartbreak. It was rage. The quiet, sharp kind. The kind that changes everything. Isaac didn't speak to Leah the moment she walked in the door. He didn't even look up from the couch. He just sat there, photo still in his hand, like it was a blade he hadn't yet decided whether to drive in or set down. Leah paused, watching him with the same cautious distance someone might use with a wounded animal. She could feel it in the air. Something had shifted. Something heavy, final. "You're home early," she said, kicking off her shoes like nothing was wrong. Isaac's voice came out low and hollow. "We need to talk." Leah hesitated, then nodded and walked over, sitting across from him. She glanced at the photo he held and her posture stiffened, just slightly. But Isaac saw it. Every twitch, every shallow breath. He tossed the photo onto the coffee table. "You kept this." She didn't answer. "You told me you didn't even know who the father was," he continued, voice eerily calm. "But I found this, and I spoke to Audrey." Her eyes snapped to his, wide and unguarded. "Audrey came here?" He nodded once. "She told me everything. First a lie to protect you, then the truth, that it is Charles." Leah's lips parted, but she didn't speak. He gave her time. "You let me raise a child that isn't mine," Isaac said. "Not just that, Charles's." "Of all people," she swallowed. "I didn't mean for it to happen like that. It was complicated." "No," Isaac said. "It was simple. You had a choice. You made it. I didn't know I was pregnant when we got together. And when you did, I thought I could handle it. That if I gave you enough love, it wouldn't matter." Isaac laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You didn't give me love, Leah. You gave me a role. You put me on stage and handed me a script I never agreed to read." Her voice cracked. "I loved you." He looked her dead in the eyes. "You loved how much I loved you. That's not the same." She stood, suddenly defensive. "You don't know how hard it was. I was scared, Isaac. You were stable, kind. You made it feel safe. I didn't know how to tell you." But you told Charles, didn't you? She blinked, caught off guard. You told him, Isaac said. Or at least, you let him figure it out. You let him watch me become a fool in real time while he stood back and smiled. That's not fair, isn't it? He snapped. Because what part of this has been fair to me? Leah, I would have taken that girl as my own. Gladly. If you had just trusted me. But instead, you turned every day into a lie. She sat down again, face pale. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. Silence stretched between them. The photo on the table glared up at both of them like a ghost neither one could ignore. I don't want her to grow up thinking I abandoned her, Isaac said. That's the only reason I'm still here. I know, Leah whispered. Isaac leaned forward, voice quieter now. I need to know something. Be honest with me. Was Charles ever going to step in? Or was he content watching from the sidelines? While I raised his kid? Leah bit her bottom lip. He didn't want her. Isaac's chest sank. Of course he didn't. He said I was on my own, she whispered. That he wasn't ready to be a father. And when you stayed, when you made everything feel okay, I was scared you'd leave if I told you the truth. Isaac nodded slowly. So, you let me stay in the dark, until he decided to finally open the curtain. Her hands trembled now. What are you going to do? He looked at her long and hard. I'm leaving. Leah's breath caught. You're leaving me? Isaac shook his head. No, I'm leaving you, but not her. Tears formed in her eyes. Isaac, please. He raised a hand. I'm not taking her away, but I'm also not going to keep living in a house where every brick was laid with a lie. She collapsed forward, hands covering her face. I don't know how to fix this. You can't, he said softly. He stood and walked toward the hallway, then paused. I'll stay until her birthday. After that, I'll move out. You and I will figure out how to share custody. However that works when I'm not her legal father. Leah's voice cracked. But you're not her father, Isaac. He turned back to her, eyes cold. Don't ever say that again. She looked up, stunned. She calls me Dad. I changed her diapers. I sang her to sleep. I taught her to read. Biology didn't make me her father. I did. Don't ever take that away from me just because it's convenient now. She said nothing, only nodded slowly. Isaac walked down the hallway and opened Leah the child's door. She was sitting on the floor in pajamas, drawing with a box of crayons. Daddy, she said brightly, holding up a picture. I drew us. Isaac knelt beside her. The drawing showed the two of them standing outside their favorite bakery, holding muffins. A crooked heart floated above their heads, his throat closed up. It's beautiful, he whispered, pulling her into a hug. You're so talented, she beamed. I made one for Mommy too, but mine's bigger. Isaac laughed softly, brushing her hair back. That's because you love me more, huh? She nodded proudly, giggling. Yep. He looked at her for a long time, memorizing her face. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know how he'd explain any of this to her, or what questions she'd ask later. But for now, in this moment, she still looked at him like he was her whole world, and that was something he wasn't ready to let go of. Later that night, when Leah had gone to bed and the apartment had gone still, Isaac sat on the balcony alone. The city lights blinked in the distance, blurred by the moisture in his eyes. He didn't cry, but his chest ached like he had. He took out his phone and opened a new message. To Charles' message, she's not your trophy. She's a child. You gave her away the day she was born. Don't come near her again. He hit send, blocked the number. Then he stared out at the horizon as if something might rise out of it and offer him peace. Nothing did. But at least now, the pretending was over. Leah's 6th birthday came with sunlight and the scent of vanilla frosting. Balloons floated lazily in the living room, taped to corners, drifting like memories Isaac couldn't quite hold on to. The apartment looked festive, but he moved through it like a man counting final steps. Every decoration he taped up, every plate he laid on the table. He knew this was the last time he'd do it here, under this roof, in this house. He watched Leah, the child, twirl in her new pink dress, laughing as she showed off the tiny butterfly clips he'd put in her hair that morning. She didn't know. Not yet. To her, this was a day of cake and candles and the people who mattered most. To Isaac, it was the final page in a chapter that had rewritten him. Leah, the woman, watched from the kitchen, arms crossed over her chest. There was guilt in her silence. And helplessness. She hadn't tried to stop him since that night. Maybe she knew better. Or maybe, for once, she understood that love wasn't enough to fix what she'd broken. The guests came and went, mostly kids from school, a few of her coworkers. No Charles. He hadn't dared show his face since Isaac's final message. By sunset, the apartment had quieted. Wrapping paper littered the floor, and the last candle on the cake had melted into a wax puddle. Leah the child sat on the couch beside him, head on his shoulder, a plush unicorn in her lap. "Daddy," she said sleepily. This was the best birthday ever. Isaac kissed her forehead. "I'm glad, baby," she blinked up at him. "Are you going to sleep in your room tonight? You haven't been there for a lot of days." Isaac hesitated. He could lie, or he could do what her mother never did. Tell the truth gently, before the world tore it from her without warning. "I'm going to a new place tomorrow," he said quietly. She sat up. "What? Why?" "I need a little space, but I'll still see you. We'll have weekends together. We can still go to the zoo and get chocolate pancakes, and I'll call you every night." "But why do you have to go?" Her eyes welled up. "Did I do something bad?" Isaac pulled her into his arms, heart breaking at the crack in her voice. No, sweetheart. You're the best thing in my world. This isn't your fault." She sobbed quietly into his chest, and he held her, like a dam holding back everything he couldn't say. He didn't leave that night. He stayed one final bedtime story, one more time brushing her hair and leaving her nightlight on, and in the morning, he packed his things and walked out the door without saying goodbye to Leah. The woman. Not a word. She stood in the hallway, watching, lips trembling, but he didn't look back, because some goodbyes don't deserve to be spoken. 2 weeks passed. He found a quiet apartment on the other side of the city. It was small, clean, quiet. He bought a single bed, a small desk, and a photo frame for his nightstand. Inside it, he placed a drawing, crayon stick figures hand in hand under a crooked sun. She had drawn it on her birthday. It kept him breathing. He stayed away from Leah entirely. She didn't reach out, neither did Charles, but Audrey did. She texted him late one night. "Check your email. I think you should see this." Attached was a document, not scanned, photographed, sloppy, like it had been rushed. A printout of a financial ledger, bank records. Charles's name was all over it. So was Leah's. A series of quiet deposits 5 years ago. Large amounts all sent right around the time Leah gave birth. And then nothing. Until recently. Then came the sudden spike in transactions again, and all of it under a shared account, quietly labeled under initials neither Charles nor Leah thought anyone would notice. It wasn't just betrayal, it was payoff. Blood money. Isaac stared at the screen for a long time, until the knots in his stomach turned into something else, something steel-cold and surgical. He called a lawyer the next day, not just for custody, but for justice. Audrey helped. She'd seen everything, emails, conversations. Leah never knew. She had been CCing their firm address on accident the whole time. Audrey never deleted a thing. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. When Isaac filed for full guardianship of Leah, the child, he didn't just come with emotional grounds. He came with evidence, receipts, proof that Charles had abandoned his rights and that Leah, the woman, had used Isaac not out of love but out of desperation and convenience. The court didn't argue. Charles never even showed. He sent a statement through his lawyer. He wanted nothing to do with the child. Isaac walked out of the courthouse a legal guardian, not a biological father, but her father, in every way that counted. 3 months later, Leah, the woman, showed up at his doorstep. She looked thinner, tired, makeup gone, hair pulled back. "I signed the papers," she said. Isaac didn't reply. "She's yours," she added. "Legally, fully. I won't contest anything." He waited, then finally said, "Why now?" Leah stared at him for a long time. "Because, for the first time, I saw her look at you like you were her home, and I realized I never gave either of you that. You gave it to each other. I was just in the way." He nodded once, then said, "Goodbye, Leah." She opened her mouth as if to say something, but thought better of it and turned to leave. 1 year later. Isaac stood in the school auditorium, surrounded by proud parents and the clamor of children with paper graduation hats. Leah ran down the steps, her eyes scanning the crowd. She found him instantly, ran to him, jumped into his arms. "Daddy!" "Did you see me? I didn't mess up the words." He laughed, lifting her high. "You were perfect. I'm so proud of you." From a few rows back, Audrey waved. She had come with him. These days, she always did. Isaac had never imagined a future like this, clean, still, peaceful. He hadn't asked for a new family, but somehow it had found him. And as Leah curled up beside him that night, watching cartoons, Isaac glanced at the wall where 2 new photos hung. One of their first day in court, and one of their first day in this apartment. No more pretending, no more lies, only the truth, finally standing on its own. And beside him, the only voice that ever mattered whispered, "I love you, Daddy." He kissed her forehead. "I love you too, baby."